I watched my wife leave with another man, not in theory, not emotionally. I mean, I watched her physically walk across the marble floor of someone else's estate, stilettos clicking like a countdown, her laughter trailing behind her as she took the arm of a man who had just dropped a single-dollar bill into my untouched drink and said, "I'll take good care of her tonight." They both laughed. Everyone laughed, except me. I didn't say a word. I just looked at the dollar, then looked up at him, at both of them, and smiled like I'd heard a mildly interesting weather report. I left the glass where it was, still full. Didn't throw it, didn't raise my voice, didn't flinch. That's when the room got confused. You see, I wasn't supposed to do that. I was supposed to unravel, demand answers, cry, plead, make a scene. That's the role I'd apparently been cast in without my consent. The pathetic husband, the obstacle, the placeholder until a man with a better watch and louder laugh came along. But I don't do auditions. I do exits. The night had started off exactly as I expected. She was stunning, always has been. Red dress, expensive smile, calculated angles. When she walked in, men looked once out of respect, twice out of danger. But I'd seen that look before. I knew that look before she knew what it meant. The host was some real estate trust clown she used to flirt with back in college. I only recognized him because he once tried to pitch me a strip mall project 15 years ago, back when I still answered my own phone. He shook my hand like a man trying to make his biceps known. I let him squeeze. He smiled at her wider, that kind of smile men wear when they've already decided what she looks like undressed. By the second hour, she was at the center of a group, laughing too loud, head tilted back. She always tilts it back when she's trying to pretend the joke is funnier than it is. But I knew that too. By the third hour, I became invisible. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow, deliberate. She stopped introducing me, stopped making eye contact. Then suddenly, she was on the balcony, his hand around her waist, like they'd just won something. And me, I just stood near the fireplace, watching the flames. Every few minutes, someone would glance at me and look away, like they'd accidentally made eye contact with the help. I don't know what was more amusing, their smugness or their math. That dollar in the glass? That wasn't disrespect. That was a signal, a declaration. Here, peasant, consider yourself compensated. $1. For the woman I'd paid for to finish grad school. For the life I funded while she found herself. For the trips, the art classes, the new car she never once asked if I could afford. Because she never imagined I'd need to, the dollar didn't offend me. It confirmed everything. And this part's important, because I know some of you reading this think, why not punch him or her or both? But if you're over 50, if you've seen people play stupid games long enough, you know something younger men don't. Violence is for people without better options. And I had better options. See, when I walked out, I didn't just walk out of that party. I walked out of the last illusion I'd been tolerating, the whole fragile performance of being the mild-mannered husband while she tested how far she could bend humiliation without snapping the rope. And I know most people won't ever see what happened next because they don't see men like me, the ones who watch, who memorize, who plan. So before I tell you what happened the next day, I'll just say this. More than 97% of people read stories like this without subscribing. If you're one of the few who actually supports the work, tap follow. It helps us make more, and it means more than you think. Anyway, back to her. She didn't even text that night. No fake apology, no attempt to spin it. She just disappeared into the guest wing of someone else's estate, wrapped in someone else's promise, assuming someone like me would be sitting at home, spiraling. But I wasn't at home, and I wasn't spiraling. I was watching the gate camera footage on my phone, waiting, calculating, lining up the pieces I'd already been preparing for weeks, just in case the moment ever came. And now it had. Her key would stop working before noon. And that dollar, that was the cheapest mistake anyone ever made in my house. She got home at 12:14 p.m., still wearing last night's dress, wrinkled now, a makeup smear just under her left eye, probably from sleeping on someone's overpriced couch, hair tousled in a way that wasn't accidental. She didn't even try to fix it before she stepped out of the Uber, like the world would wait while she gathered herself. She didn't notice the sign on the gate right away. She just walked up to the door like nothing had happened, like I was supposed to be inside waiting, maybe in the kitchen, with a look of hurt and a pot of overcompensating coffee. She slid the key in, turned it, nothing. Her brows knit. She tried again, twisting harder like that made a difference. Still nothing. That's when she knocked. 2 knocks, firm, like she was trying to signal annoyance rather than desperation. She paused, waited, looked at her phone, knocked again, harder this time, still nothing. She called my number, I know, because the house system logs every attempt, straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. She stepped back, confused, turned around to glance at the street like maybe she'd gotten the wrong house. That's when she saw it, a small, professionally printed sign mounted just inside the gate. Premises secured, legal access revoked. She froze. I watched it happen on the security feed from my suite across town, the precise moment when confidence fractured, when her smirk faltered, when the mascara under her eyes suddenly looked less like rebellion and more like regret. Her hand hovered over the intercom, but she didn't press it. I disabled it. Let me explain something here, because this isn't just about a lock. It's not about spite. It's about planning, about knowing what a person will do before they do it, and removing the runway before they ever realize they're about to fall. The house? In my name. Always had been. The utilities? All mine. The security contract? Recently upgraded with a clause she never knew existed, one that allowed immediate revocation of household access to any non-owner in the event of marital dispute or legal conflict. And yes, I'd invoked it. 2 hours before she even stumbled into her affair partner's Tesla. She stared at the gate like it had betrayed her. Then she started pacing, called someone. Probably him. Didn't matter. I already knew he wouldn't answer. She walked around the property, tried the side entrance. That one had a second sign, all access points monitored, legal counsel retained. The irony? She always joked I was paranoid. Why all the cameras? She once asked while sipping wine in our backyard. It's not like anyone's coming for us. And she was right. No one was coming for us. She was coming against me. And I'd built this house for war. That wrinkled dress of hers, the one she wore like a badge of conquest, it was beginning to look more like a uniform of defeat. She crossed her arms, looked down the street as if a neighbor might emerge and help, but they wouldn't. I'd spoken to 3 of them over the past few weeks. A favor here, a bit of info there. One of them was a retired judge, the other a friend from an old legal board. They'd seen things like this before. I'd asked them not to intervene. She sat on the steps for a few minutes, called someone else, checked her phone again. By 1:03 p.m., she was still outside. By 1:15, she'd tried calling me 4 more times. The last one was longer. She left a voicemail. Her voice cracked halfway through. Are you serious with this? You're just locking me out like some stranger after everything? Funny thing, she finally got it. That's exactly what she was now, a stranger. And strangers don't get keys. At 1:34, she called her sister. I know this because her sister texted me 5 minutes later with a simple message. She's panicking. You okay? I didn't reply, but I was more than okay. I was in control. She didn't see the second envelope I left in the mailbox. Under her name, not yet. She'd find that soon. And when she did, she'd finally understand. She hadn't just left with another man. She'd walked out of a life that no longer included her. And I wasn't coming to open the door. The voicemail came at 2:07 p.m., less than an hour after she gave up pacing and walked to the corner deli to beg the owner for a bathroom and some bottled water. She looked drained, hair limp now, heels in hand, dress creased like it had been slept in on an unfamiliar couch, which it had. She didn't notice her phone buzzing until the second ring. When she saw the name, Grant, CEO, a flash of relief crossed her face. She answered with her usual breathy entitlement. Hey, But his voice cut her off. Fast, sharp, desperate. What the hell did you get me into? She blinked, confused. Grant, what are you? You didn't tell me your husband was him. She stood there, phone pressed against her ear, eyes narrowing as if he'd just accused her of something absurd. What are you talking about? Who the hell is him? There was a pause, a breath. Then Grant's voice dropped, nearly trembling. I got a letter. This morning. Hand-delivered. Not through email. Not even through my assistant. Delivered to my office by name. What kind of letter? A security notice, legal language, precise, cold. It referenced my company's non-disclosure terms, conflict of interest clauses. It had details about last night, dates, footage, Marissa, footage. And it was signed by, he hesitated, signed by what? An entity, a holding company, the same one your husband controls, apparently for over 15 years. Silence. You never said he was a legal strategist, that he advises corporate boards, that he owns half the data firm my company just signed with last quarter. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Her lips moved like she was about to deny it, twist it, spin it back into her favor, but the words wouldn't come. Grant kept going. Do you even know what you've done? If there's a hint, and I mean a hint, that I breached ethics protocol by sleeping with the wife of a data partner, I'm not just screwed. I'm done. Marissa's hand trembled. He's bluffing. He wouldn't. But the line had already gone dead. She pulled the phone back, stared at it, tried calling him back, straight to voicemail. She tried again and again, 5 more times. Voicemail each time. On the 6th try, a robotic voice answered. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Her stomach turned. Not just dropped, turned. She stood there on the sidewalk, gripping a phone that no longer led to anything. Inside her head, gears finally began to spin, but not in the way she wanted, not in the tidy, manipulatively confident way she'd always leaned on. This wasn't a fight she could flirt her way out of. There was no angle, no sympathetic narrative she could run to a friend or a therapist or a social media page. This wasn't emotional fallout. This was corporate warfare. Grant's company had just inked a major deal with a data infrastructure firm, one she only vaguely remembered me mentioning years ago, back when she used to zone out during what she called my boring legal crap. That boring crap, that was the spine of her affair partner's entire platform, and it was wrapped quietly, efficiently, and publicly around me. She thought she'd traded up, but she had no idea where the ladder even was. Now, the man who swaggered out of that party with his hand on her back wouldn't even answer her call, because now she wasn't leverage, she was liability. And you know the best part? She still didn't know the full extent. She hadn't even opened the envelope waiting in the mailbox at the gate. Inside was a single sentence printed on firm paper. By engaging in a personal relationship with a restricted party, you have triggered disclosure protocols. She didn't know what that meant yet, but soon she'd find out that the affair wasn't just messy, it was reportable, and she was the report. The motel room smelled like old carpet and Lysol, the kind of place where the light bulbs buzz and the remote control has a sticky film no one wants to identify. She didn't even flinch when the front desk guy gave her a once-over as she checked in. Dress wrinkled, lipstick faded, credit card declining once before the second one finally approved. She threw her bag on the bed and yanked open the complimentary desk chair like it had personally insulted her. Her hands hovered over her laptop keyboard for a full 30 seconds before she started typing. First, his full name, Jonathan Elliott Kerrigan. Enter. She squinted at the screen, waiting for, what, maybe a LinkedIn profile, a Facebook page with 2 fishing photos and a post about aging knees, something boring, something predictable, something that would confirm the man she'd belittled at brunch and forgotten at parties was, in fact, just a generic husband waiting to be discarded. Instead, the first result hit like a truck. The quiet man behind the multi-million-dollar trust, how a legal strategist built a fortress from the shadows. She blinked, clicked, there it was. His photo, not a selfie, but a cropped image from some conference panel. No tie, minimal smile. The caption read, Jonathan Kerrigan, legal architect of the Kerrigan Private Holdings model, a framework now utilized by over 200 private firms for asset shielding and trust restructuring. She scrolled, his name peppered across articles about data security, intellectual property warfare, executive advisement. Every piece framed him the same way, quiet, brilliant, and allergic to press. A quote from a business journal piece 6 months ago stuck out. He doesn't talk, he documents. Doesn't threaten, he enforces. Most of his adversaries never even realize he's involved until the checkmate's already printed and filed. Her heart pounded. Back. Google again. This time she tried just his initials. JEC, more results. some connected to arbitration boards, others linked to advisory groups. She recognized one name, a boutique firm her affair partner had frantically tried to impress during a call last week. She remembered because he had said, "These guys are ghosts, but they move money." Apparently, her husband was the ghost. She swallowed and typed one more thing, a phrase she half remembered from mail he used to leave on the counter, the LLC she once mocked for sounding like a fake shell company. Argent Fold Strategies, LLC first result. Top-tier private asset architecture and crisis mitigation firm. Founded and directed by J.E. Kerrigan. Clients include multinational boards, privacy law coalitions, and silent capital syndicates. She leaned back. The air in the room suddenly felt heavier. She remembered now all the times he'd been on the phone speaking in that calm, low voice with people whose names she never asked about, all the envelopes he never opened in front of her, the briefcases, the off-site meetings, the fact that he never once bragged about his work, not even when she mocked his boring consulting gigs at dinner parties. She always assumed he didn't have power because he didn't show it. Now she understood he didn't show it because he didn't need to. And she had laughed at him, in front of people, dismissed him as dull, unambitious, outdated, but the only thing outdated now was her perception. She clicked through one more article, an op-ed on the legal protections around marital trusts. His name was on the byline, right next to the phrase, "Infidelity-triggered clauses in prenuptial fortifications." Her blood ran cold. She hadn't just underestimated him. She'd never even tried to understand who he was. And now every step she took was like wandering deeper into a house she thought she owned, only to find out she'd never held the keys. She stared at the glowing screen. Somewhere out there, her husband wasn't scrambling, wasn't crying, wasn't reacting. He was executing. And she'd just now started reading the rules to a game he had finished playing before she even knew it started. She stormed into the bank like she still owned something. Hair tied back now, oversized sunglasses masking what was left of her pride, she marched past the welcome desk with a purposeful click of low heels and the kind of posture women wear when they're trying to fake control. The teller, young, clean-cut, a little too eager, greeted her with a chipper, "Good afternoon," but she cut him off with a single word, "Manager." She didn't want small talk. She wanted her money. While she waited, she pulled out her phone, swiping through a credit card app that still refused to refresh. Still frozen. Still showing a red error unable to process request banner at the top. She tapped it again and again, like it owed her something, like persistence could undo precision. When the branch manager came out, a man she vaguely remembered seeing at their holiday party last year, he gave her a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Marissa," he said, neutral, cautious, "let's step into my office." That alone rattled her. She was expecting a quick answer, not a closed-door conversation, not privacy. Inside the office, she didn't sit. "I'm trying to access my personal account and our joint savings," she snapped. "Everything's frozen. What's going on?" He gave a tight smile like he'd rehearsed this. "There have been recent updates to the account structures," he said. "You'll find everything you need here." He slid an envelope across the desk. Her name printed cleanly in bold. She hesitated, tore it open. Inside was a single-page document, notarized, watermarked, and perfectly legal. Amendment to Kerrigan Marital Trust, effective 12 a.m. prior day. Pursuant to Clause 9b of the original agreement and in accordance with state trust law, the undersigned has enacted full revocation of beneficiary status in the event of confirmed breach of marital clause, specifically subsection 17c relating to fidelity, reputational harm, and unauthorized disclosures. Her name. Removed, his name, signed, the timestamp, exactly 6 minutes after she left the estate party. She blinked at the page as if it might change if she stared hard enough. "This is a joke," she said, eyes darting up. "You can't just remove someone from a marital trust overnight." He folded his hands calmly. "Actually, you can, if the trust was structured as revocable with conditional triggers. And if the infidelity clause was baked into the original prenup and recertified upon refinancing the property, I never recertified anything." He raised an eyebrow. "The 2010 refinancing documents. You signed them electronically. Standard clause carried over." Her mouth opened, then closed. She remembered the document vaguely, pages and pages of legalese she scrolled through while watching some reality show, signing in the little blue DocuSign boxes like she was clicking accept cookies on a website. He continued, voice even professional. Your personal account was part of a shared security structure tied to the trust. Since your removal, access has been suspended pending independent review. The joint account was liquidated yesterday morning. Liquidated where? To the trust's primary account, which I'm no longer correct. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the envelope, crinkling the document she was no longer part of. How much was in there? She asked, quiet now. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood and opened the door. I recommend contacting your personal counsel, he said. If you need a copy of the amendment, we can email it. She walked out in a daze, paper clenched in her hand like a pink slip from a life she thought she controlled. At the ATM, she tried her card again, like denial could magically erase signatures. Still frozen, she pulled out her backup card, the secret one she thought I didn't know about, the one she used for little guilty pleasures she thought I'd never see, also frozen. She looked around as if someone might intervene, might stop this collapse before it hit the ground, but no one was coming. No hero, no concerned voice asking if she was okay. She was alone, in a beige hallway that smelled like printer toner and forgotten pensions, and now the only thing she owned was panic. It had taken me exactly 11 hours and 43 minutes to legally remove her from the house, the accounts, and the trust. No shouting, no spectacle, just paper and silence. She slammed her palm against the buzzer, then again, longer this time. The kind of ring you don't use when you're visiting, the kind you use when you want answers. Her sister opened the door barefoot, hair tied up, a toddler clinging to one leg, and a juice box in the other. Jesus, Marissa, what happened to you? She shoved past her without waiting. I need your guest room. The sister didn't ask why. She just watched her fling her purse onto the couch, collapse beside it like a storm in a red dress, and exhale a breath filled with fury. I need a place. Just for a bit. Everything's messed up. Jonathan locked me out. The accounts are gone. The cards are dead. And Grant, she shook her head, voice catching. Grant cut contact. His number's disconnected. The sister sighed, not with surprise, with recognition. Yeah, I figured. Marissa turned sharply. You figured? What the hell is that supposed to mean? The sister didn't raise her voice. She picked up the toddler, handed her a cookie, and pointed her toward the iPad. Then she looked at Marissa square in the face. He told me not to get involved, months ago. It hit like a slap. What? The sister sat down. I don't know the whole story. I didn't ask, but he came over one afternoon back in April, helped me with some estate stuff. I asked him if you two were doing okay. You'd been, I don't know, distant, different. He just smiled and said, everything's moving exactly as it should. Marissa stared, mouth slightly open. And you didn't tell me? Tell you what, she snapped, finally sounding annoyed. That your husband, who's been bailing you out and funding your yoga retreats for years, suddenly looked like a man who didn't need to anymore? The toddler sneezed. No one moved. I thought you'd come to me if something was really wrong, but you never did, not even when I asked. I didn't know anything was wrong, Marissa barked, standing now, pacing. I thought he lost his job. He was just quiet and boring. He let me believe. No, you chose to believe that, her sister said flatly. There's a difference. Silence settled in the room like smoke. Then more softly, I asked him if he was okay after the layoff. He laughed and said, I wasn't working for money. Marissa froze mid-step. What? The sister nodded. I asked what he meant. He just winked and said, some men fish, some men build ponds. I thought it was some weird metaphor. Now I'm not so sure. She sat back down, the weight of it sinking in. He told me not to worry, said that when things shifted, I shouldn't pick a side. I thought maybe it was about a move or retirement or, I don't know, something mundane. But now I think he meant this. Marissa stood in the middle of the room, staring at a half-drawn crayon picture on the fridge. Her hands trembled. She'd come here for comfort, reinforcement. She thought her sister would say something like, he's being crazy, or we'll fight this, or you deserve better. Instead, all she got was truth. And the worst part, everyone around her had known. They hadn't said a word, not because they were afraid, but because they respected him. That was the difference, and she hadn't even noticed it before. People respected Jonathan, quietly, subtly, enough to stay out of his way, enough to never question him, enough to not warn her. She was the only one who hadn't realized the war she thought she started had been lost before she even unscrewed the first grenade. "Where's your phone charger?" she asked numbly. Her sister pointed toward the kitchen, but her tone was careful now. "You can stay here tonight, but after that, you need to figure out where you're going." Marissa didn't answer. She plugged in her phone and watched the screen light up. No messages, no missed calls, just a cold, empty digital silence. She was surrounded by people, family, and yet she had never felt more alone. At 5:38 p.m., her phone buzzed. A text, no name, just a number she didn't recognize. Dinner at 7:12:54, E-Monarch, dress formal, no punctuation, no signature, nothing but coordinates. But the moment she read it, her heart seized with a jolt of hope, ugly, reluctant hope, but hope nonetheless. He's reaching out. Maybe he wanted to talk. Maybe this was his way of extending an olive branch without admitting he missed her. Jonathan never liked long conversations. Maybe this was his version of a peace offering. She stood in front of the closet in her sister's hallway, what little she'd salvaged in a single overnight bag, and chose the only dress that wasn't wrinkled beyond salvation, a black sheath with gold trim. The one he used to say made her look expensive and lethal. She took that as a compliment back then. Now it just felt like a costume. At 6:53 p.m., she stepped out of the Uber in front of a sandstone building with double glass doors and warm lighting spilling from long windows. No sign, just a valet who took the car keys from the Mercedes ahead of her and barely looked at her as she walked past. The doorman asked for her name. "Marissa Kerrigan," she said, smoothing her dress. He scanned the list clipped to a sleek leather binder. His brow tightened. "I'm sorry, that name's not listed." She forced a laugh. "Well, that's probably because it's under my husband's name, Jonathan Kerrigan. He invited me." Another glance, a hesitation. Then she heard it. Clear, unmistakable. His voice. "Thank you, Richard. That won't be necessary." She turned. He was inside, at the head of a long mahogany table, surrounded by 10 people in tailored suits and sharp evening dresses. The air hummed with quiet authority. Every guest had a small gold place card in front of them. Their plates had already been set. The waiters poured wine into crystal glasses like choreography. And Jonathan, he looked like gravity, calm, composed, in control. He didn't come to her. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood at the edge of the dining room and met her eyes. "I didn't invite you." Her smile twitched. "You texted me." "I didn't." A pause. The doorman stepped forward again. "Sir?" Jonathan nodded once. "Escort her out." The doorman placed a gentle but firm hand near her arm, not touching, but close enough to let her know the choice was gone. "Wait," she said, blinking, her voice cracking under the weight of confusion and something dangerously close to pleading. "You brought me all the way here just to humiliate me?" He tilted his head, not cruel, just measured. "This isn't about you," he said. "This dinner is for stakeholders, advisors, people who've been part of this restructuring since before you noticed me fading from the room." She stepped back, as if physically struck. "You're punishing me." "No," he replied, turning away. "I'm protecting the table." And with that, he returned to his seat. She stood there for a full 10 seconds as forks clinked and quiet conversation resumed without pause. Someone laughed at the far end, a deep baritone laugh. She didn't recognize the man. She didn't recognize any of them. These weren't their old friends. These weren't people she knew from gallery openings or benefit galas. These were his people, the ones she never asked about, the ones she never imagined existed. The doorman walked her back down the steps. Didn't say a word. Outside, the air had turned cold. She crossed the street and leaned against the brick wall of a closed boutique. Her hands shook. She pulled out her phone again, checked the text. Still there, still no name. She scrolled up. There was no message history, no trail, just that one standalone text, a setup. She looked back across the street. The windows shimmered. Inside, a life continued that no longer made space for her. This wasn't a dinner invitation. This was an obituary. She just didn't know she'd died yet. The first message came at 11:42 p.m. A single notification lighting up her cracked phone screen while she lay on her sister's futon, staring at the ceiling like it owed her an explanation. It was from an old college friend. Just 2 words. "Jesus. You okay?" She sat up. Another ping. This time a link. Then 3 more. One from a former coworker, one from a number she didn't recognize, one with a skull emoji and a laughing face. She tapped the link. It led to a financial news site she barely ever read, one of those black background, white serif font ones that only executives and interns pretending to be executives cared about. But now her face was on it. Executive resigns amid financial misconduct allegations linked to romantic impropriety. Below that, a blurry photo from the estate party, her in the red dress, Grant's hand on the small of her back, her mouth caught mid-laugh. And just behind them, in the background, out of focus but unmistakable, her husband, watching. Another photo, this time sharper, her and Grant slipping out the side door, time-stamped, watermarked, then a screen capture of the board memo that had been leaked, a scanned PDF, clean, sharp, the subject line punched her in the stomach, urgent, undisclosed conflict of interest involving data vendor spouse. In the body, documentation submitted reveals a romantic relationship between the firm's acting CEO and the legal spouse of a stakeholder in a concurrent data infrastructure agreement. Said spouse maintained proximity to confidential documentation, possible breach of Section 5B, vendor neutrality. Investigation advised, resignation encouraged for mitigation. The email wasn't signed by her husband directly, it was signed by the compliance officer at Argentfold Strategies. But in the forwarded metadata in the audit trail, origin, J.E. Kerrigan authorization key, executive tier access attached materials, video footage, legal framework, chronology of contact. She couldn't breathe. She opened her browser. Twitter was already boiling. A finance satire account had posted the party video. Someone had pulled the security footage from the estate's balcony camera and edited in dramatic music overlaying, "I'll take good care of her tonight." Cut to resignation, press release, stock drop, board panic. It had gone viral, not just in industry circles, not just among insiders, but everywhere. Someone found her wedding photo from 10 years ago. She in a white dress, Jonathan beside her, younger but still unsmiling, still observant. That image had been paired with a freeze frame from the leaked footage. The caption, "Should have Googled the husband first." She threw the phone across the room. It hit the floor and skittered under the couch. She didn't chase it. For a moment, she sat in the silence, listening to her sister's family asleep down the hall. Then came the call. Blocked number. She answered. Grant. His voice was stripped of arrogance now, nothing but panic and breath. "You set me up," he said, not as a question. This was a damning setup. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear to God, I didn't." "You were married to a legal ghost," he snarled. "I can't even scrub his name from the document trail. The firm's lawyer said the complaint came with timestamps before the party. Before we—" He stopped himself. She couldn't speak. "You don't get it," he continued. "This isn't just career ending. There's liability. They're going through everything now. Expenses, gifts, access logs. If they prove I shared anything with you, and you were tied to a vendor, Jesus, I could go to jail." "I didn't tell him anything." "It doesn't matter," he shouted. "It's about optics, integrity, the appearance of breach. You were a risk the second I touched you." And he knew. Click. The line went dead. She didn't try to call back. She knew what he'd realized, what she was just now starting to accept. The moment that dollar hit her husband's drink, the fuse was already burning, quietly, cleanly, and she thought she was in control. She thought their little dance had been private, but nothing had been private, not really. Every step, every glance, every whisper, logged, compiled, delivered like evidence to the only court that mattered, his. And now the world knew her name, not as a star, not as an up-and-comer, but as the asterisk at the bottom of a resignation notice. Her reputation wasn't just bruised, it was formatted, clean, empty, replaced by a headline she couldn't delete. At 10:06 a.m., there was a knock at the motel door, not a pounding, not urgent. Just 3 calm, practiced raps, the kind that don't ask for permission, they announce. She cracked it open, squinting against the daylight like it was offensive. A man in a gray windbreaker stood there, clipboard in hand, neutral face, company badge, not a courier company she recognized. "Delivery for Marissa Kerrigan," he said. Not Mrs. Just the name. Clean, precise, she nodded dumbly. took the envelope, and watched as he turned and walked away without a word. No signature required, no small talk, just a handoff. She didn't open it immediately. She already knew what it was, the weight of the envelope, the silence of its arrival, the way it felt cold, even after resting in her palm. Back in the motel room, she sat down on the edge of the bed, ripped the seal open, and pulled out a stack of papers, neatly bound with a black binder clip. The first page said everything. Dissolution of marriage. Final agreement. Her name. His name. The date. Today's date. The bolded section beneath the heading. Clause 17C invoked. Grounds. Infidelity. Reputational harm. Breach of fiduciary trust. She flipped through the pages, each line more surgical than the last. No excess language, no melodrama. Just precision. Like a contract for a corporate merger, only she was the asset being divested. Section 4A, alimony, waived. Section 5C, property distribution. Claimant surrenders all rights to primary residence. Section 7D, beneficiary status. Permanently revoked from marital and individual trusts. Section 9F, future litigation. Waiver signed upon execution. Section 11, statement of agreement. Signatory acknowledges full understanding of terms and voluntarily consents. The last page held a single empty signature line under her name, just one name missing, and a note in red ink beneath it. Deadline for signature, 24 hours. Non-response will be interpreted as acceptance per clause 22A. That was it. No letter, no explanation, no room for argument. He'd filed, finalized, and footnoted every piece of her life into legal irrelevance. She set the stack down, rubbed her eyes. No tears came. There was nothing left to cry with. Not after the eviction, not after the frozen accounts, not after the boardroom humiliation and the digital crucifixion on social media. This was the final incision. She picked up the pen from the motel desk, one of those cheap blue ones with the bank's logo half worn off, stared at it. She could sign, be done, or she could wait. But that meant nothing, because the document had already anticipated her indecision. Clause 22A made sure of it. No response is response. He had taken even that from her, the luxury of silence. In a sick way, it was brilliant. It was exactly what she used to do in arguments. Delay, obfuscate, manipulate. But he'd learned, he'd watched, and when it was his turn to walk away, he didn't slam the door, he locked it behind him. With a notary, her eyes moved again across the words. No alimony, no property claim, no asset distribution. She flipped back to the prenup. The signature date stared up at her from the bottom of the page. July 19th, 2011. She remembered that day. He'd brought the paperwork to brunch. Said calmly, "No offense, just good sense." She laughed at him, called it cute, and signed it while sipping mimosas. He'd reminded her again in 2018 when they refinanced. "Same structure," he said. She didn't read it. She just clicked. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Her hands didn't shake this time. They just stilled, not out of peace, out of absence. There was nothing left to bargain with. No leverage to scream about. No mutual friends to guilt. No assets to freeze. No partner to run to. She wasn't just alone. She was disarmed. Every piece of her had been pre-sorted, reclassified, and archived like she was just a project completed on deadline. Even her downfall had a paper trail. She looked at the signature line again, still blank, still waiting. But the worst part wasn't the document itself. It was that the man who once made her coffee and rubbed her back after long meetings had written her out of his life with the elegance of a man removing a stain from his cufflink. She folded the papers, put them back in the envelope, laid them beside the motel room's old rotary phone. She had 24 hours, but she already knew. The decision wasn't hers anymore. The payphone was wedged between a flickering street lamp and a graffiti-tagged mailbox, one of the last in the city that still worked. She stood in front of it for several minutes before picking up the receiver, unsure if she even remembered the number, but her fingers did. Muscle memory. Like old routines, making his coffee black, finding his keys before he asked, telling him to speak up when he mumbled. She fed the coins in, listened to the mechanical clicks, and then ringing. She didn't expect him to answer. Maybe a voicemail, maybe silence. But on the third ring, he picked up. No greeting, just breath. "Jonathan?" A pause. Yes. It hit her harder than she thought it would. Just hearing his voice again, not filtered through paperwork, not stripped into clauses or notarized legalese. Just him, the man who used to ask if she needed anything before bed, the man who stopped asking, quietly, long ago. She didn't know what to say at first, then only this. I didn't know, she whispered. Silence stretched thin between them. About any of it, she added, weaker now. Who you are, what you built, what you were preparing. His voice, when it came, wasn't angry. It wasn't soft either, just steady. I know you didn't, he said. That's why I planned everything before the party. Her knees nearly gave out. She leaned into the booth, gripping the cord like it could anchor her. A dry laugh escaped her throat, half breath, half breakdown. You knew, she said. All of it. You saw me. You knew I was going to walk away. No, he said, quiet. I knew you already had. You just hadn't left yet. That was the dagger. Not the lockout, not the freezing of accounts, not the legal exile, the realization that he didn't just watch her betray him. He watched her arrive at betrayal. Slow, inevitable. Like a tide he stopped trying to hold back long before the first wave ever hit the shore. I made a mistake, she said, her voice cracking like porcelain. Another pause, and then, I didn't. The line went dead. She stood there, receiver still pressed to her ear, listening to the static. It was done. He hadn't yelled, hadn't gloated, hadn't rubbed it in, because he didn't need to. That was the part that tore deepest. She had imagined somehow that all the devastation he brought down had come from rage, from heartbreak, from wounded pride, but no, he wasn't broken. He was finished, and she was just now realizing the difference. She hung up the receiver and stepped back into the cold night, streetlights humming above, the weight of silence heavier than any verdict. No headlines now, no board memos, no documents to sign, just the echo of a man who once loved her and who now finally didn't.